Hello everyone, MFPallytime here. Welcome back to the channel. Hope you guys are having a great day today as always. In today's video, we're talking about Baldur's Gate 3 again. We're going to be going over the top questions that we found the most interesting on the Larian Studios AMA about Baldur's Gate 3. Larian answered a lot of questions and directly answered a lot involving many of the controversies that cropped up with Baldur's Gate 3. We should note, if you would like to read everything that was asked, we're going to leave a link down in the video description for you guys to go there directly. But here are the ones that we found the most interesting.
Question number 1. Julius Borisov asked, without using the words Dungeons and Dragons or Forgotten Realms, what in your opinion makes Baldur's Gate 3 a sequel to the first two Baldur's Gate games? What was the reasoning behind the title choice?
You can't see this from anything we've shown so far because we don't want to spoil it, but we do touch upon the story of Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 in a deeply meaningful way, and there are returning characters. The city plays a massive part, and like in the originals, you'll play an adventurer in which the party is the heart and soul, with protagonists who will be afflicted by the gods against their will. That said, you can't separate Baldur's Gate from Dungeons and Dragons. The goal of BioWare was to make a great Dungeons and Dragons game, and that's also our goal. We want to make a great D&D game with lots of player agency, great depth, lots of iconic creatures, NPCs, and locations, which you can play in both single player and in multiplayer. We want to make a pretty dark game where you have to deal with lots of choice and consequences. We're letting you do pretty terrible things, or God things. If I wouldn't have died during the PAX presentation, I would have been able to show some of that. So I think we'll probably upload a video that was supposed to be shown, and you'll certainly see more the closer we get to early access. I read that big PC Gamer article on the history of Baldur's Gate, and as I was reading through it, I was surprised by how much of what the original creators wanted to do with Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 matched what we were doing. The biggest difference, in my opinion, is the way combat is implemented, and that we're using the D&D 5e, and they of course were using 2e. I would like to add in here that there's been a lot of controversy online about Baldur's Gate 3, with some people criticizing it as being a Divinity Original Sin 2 mod or expansion to that game, rather than a Baldur's Gate or D&D game. I feel like this is Swin tackling that criticism head on and promising that it is a true Baldur's Gate and Dungeons and Dragons experience. It's also nice to hear that soon we'll get to see more video footage that represents this series more closely. I believe what he was referring to, by the way, when he was talking about the PAX footage being cut short, there was a vampire scene where Astarion is biting the neck of a party member. Now, as a vampire spawn, he does have the need to feed. I know we made that joke last time, but it's just really funny. But as you're biting the neck of your compatriot there, you can adequately drain them and satiate your hunger, or you can accidentally just suck them dry and kill them. The outcome of that fully depends on rolling the dice well and hoping for the best. I mean, that's a pretty interesting party dynamic, and we're personally very excited to see what other dark and gritty moments our parties could encounter.
Question number 2. I Will Put My Finger asked, are there plans to make custom characters feel as unique as the origin ones? If so, what can you tell us about them?
Larry and Adam answered, custom characters are hugely important to us. And when you choose your class, race, and background, you've already made choices that have an impact throughout the entire game, both in terms of what you do, how you're perceived, and what you know. But just as in the tabletop, it's what you do after character creation and how you choose to roleplay that character that will make your adventure and character unique. In some ways, they are more unique because you made them. The world and the characters that populate it, whether companions, NPCs, enemies, or potential allies, will remember and react to your actions and attitude. Custom characters are essential to the arc of Baldur's Gate 3, and as your journey unfolds, you'll walk your own path. And when your story ends, you'll have determined your own fate, and the fate of many others. That last part sure is ominous. This was addressing another source of controversy, that custom characters will be as limited as they were in Divinity Original Sin 2 in terms of customization. To follow up to that, they answered another question by saying, when you're playing as a custom character, you'll choose a voice as part of your character creation, and your character will be fully voiced, not just for barks. Character creation can be as in-depth as you want it to be. After you select a race and a class, you could be all set and ready to go. But if you want to, you can dive in deeper and change all of the abilities, spells, skills, cantrips, and customize your visuals. You will be able to select a face type, hairdo, facial hair, your skin color. They couldn't give exact numbers or details about how many customization features there would be. The point that they were addressing is there's not going to be a slider to make your eyes gigantic or make them really, really tiny, but there is going to be more choices for customization in Baldur's Gate 3 than there has been in any other Larian title.
Question number 3. Jiggy724 asked, at full release, will all of the player's handbook classes and races be represented?
Larian Adam answered, at launch we're planning to include all of the classes from the player's handbook, but we're only talking about the races announced during the gameplay presentation for now. In case you didn't know, all of the classes in the player's handbook are the Barbarian, Bard, Cleric, Druid, Fighter, Monk, Paladin, Ranger, Rogue, Sorcerer, Warlock, and Wizard. They also mention if you're playing the tabletop version of D&D as any of these characters, you should be able to recreate your playstyle from the tabletop game inside of Baldur's Gate 3.
Question number 4. Mark Abaddon asked, can you say anything about the level cap?
Larian's Nick P. answered, we're planning to cover levels 1 through 10 in the full release. What we can discern from this is levels are likely to be more meaningful than what they were in Divinity. Also, the level cap probably applies to your character's class, and each character will be able to have multiple classes, such as, a fighter and a monk, or a fighter and a rogue, or whatever other combination you feel like doing. They added some more details on multiclassing in another answer, once again by Nick P. Multiclassing rules will follow closely with the 5e D&D. On level up, characters will be able to continue with their current class or choose a new class, provided they meet the requirements. However, multiclassing is not going to be available in early access at launch, and they're planning to add it later, so we are going to have to wait some time to see how this system works entirely.
Question number 5. Jiggy724 asked, how will our character's background affect his or her story?
Larian Adam answered, in a lot of dialogue backgrounds, race and class determine what options you're going to get. A Githyanki or a Drow, for instance, will have different experiences from an elf. In the demo Swin gave at PAX, he encountered a companion named Shadowheart. The entire conversation goes completely different if you approach her as a Githyanki because she had an experience with one before. Things like that permeate throughout the entire game, so it's true to say that no one playthrough is ever going to be like another person's. So if you look at it that way, the background and the choices that you make create a completely unique story.
I'm going to jump in on this one. This is Larian once again addressing the criticism surrounding custom characters not having as much flavor and interesting dialogues and happenings as origin characters, such as what everyone experienced in Divinity Original Sin 2. Custom characters being as unique and fun to play as origin characters is a big concern of both Baldur's Gate fans and D&D fans. With this question, it is now confirmed that the race that you choose will change your interaction with various NPCs in the game. Now I'm curious to find out what other aspects of a custom character could affect the gameplay experience. Question number 6. Racing Hedgehogs asked, I think the concern here is that people felt that playing Divinity Original Sin 2 as a non-origin character was somewhat pointless because they would miss out on quite a few dialogue options and would have substantially less storyline. This was especially true if you were playing co-op, because each person who made a custom character decreased how much you could interact with even companion stories. Will there be more storyline for customs than what was seen in Divinity Original Sin 2? Perhaps something akin to Dragon Age Origins origin characters?
Larian Adam responded, this isn't Divinity Original Sin 2. It's Baldur's Gate 3. Custom characters have a much stronger connection to the world and the main arc of the story, whether they're from Baldur's Gate, further afield, or somewhere else entirely. The campaign is much more reactive to your actions. When we say there are serious consequences to your choices, we really mean it. And as you move through your adventure, you'll discover quest lines and stories that relate directly to your character, your role-playing, and the things that you have done. We're confident that you won't feel shortchanged in terms of narrative breadth and depth if you choose to play a custom character. We love our origins, but this campaign is built for all of you. Now, this one is a little bit of a side tangent for me. Personally, when I'm playing Divinity with friends, I would always play a custom character because I wanted the focus of the game to be on them. I've already played it, I've already experienced it, I'm here to support them in their campaign. I also think that's a bit of an isolated case, though. I'm coming up on 700 hours in Divinity 2, and I've kind of seen it all at this point. So it's probably a better thing that the campaign is going to be more focused on everyone. A more encompassing story is obviously going to be awesome.
Question 7. Duskbearer asked, the variety of alignments in Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 allowed for many interesting party compositions and conflicts. For example, Edwin became openly hostile towards some companions and will straight up start a physical fight with them or refuse to be in the same group as them due to his lawful evil alignment. It's been said that there won't be an alignment system on Baldur's Gate 3 as it's no longer relevant to 5e, but will we still get to have openly evil and selfish party members that actively support evil actions and might leave the group if you play in a more heroic fashion, or will all party members have a more neutral good behavior?
Larian Jan answered, alignment may carry less weight in the 5th edition, but all companions definitely have their own moral compass. Some are fine with evil and underhanded deeds, and others are not, and they'll be vocal about their approval or opposition to the decisions that you make. It is absolutely possible to take actions that cross the line for someone and he or she will leave the party, or even decide to attack you. From the player's perspective, there is the freedom to play the game in any which way that you want from an alignment perspective. In dialogues, there are plenty of choices to be made, from heroically good to patently evil, and the different shades in between. Added to that, there are unique options to be had for a player's race or class point of view that fit in with the good, neutral, or evil perspectives. As you would expect, a drow will get different options compared to a paladin of tier, for instance. For sure, the world will react to your actions and the choices that you make, since these will in some way define you. For example, Asterion is a vampire spawn, and when you play him, you can try to hide this from your party. But if they find out, because, well, you might try to bite them when they're asleep, they will obviously be shocked, and unless you manage to handle the situation with that necessary tact of diplomacy, you may find yourself left behind, companionless. It sounds like they're going for something similar to old BioWare games like Knights of the Old Republic or Dragon's Age, combined with like the Telltale game series. Maybe you'll say something offensive to someone, or something not offensive, and you could tell they're just gonna remember that. Is it a good thing that they're gonna remember that? It's probably not a good thing. Hey, how do you put batteries in a radio? That reference isn't too old, someone will get that.
Question 8. Lou Dobbs asked, my question doesn't come from a place of criticism, just curiosity. What was the reason in having the combat be more akin to Divinity Original Sins with taking turns, as opposed to Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, having a combat-wise pause, plan accordingly, then unpausing to let the shit hit the fan and adjusting?
Larian Swin answered, from the start, we wanted to stay as close to Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition as we could. Making combat turn-based felt only natural given that Dungeons & Dragons is turn-based by nature. It allows us to replicate the same high-stakes combat experience as the tabletop game while still giving players exact control over what happens on the battlefield. The type of world and game that we are building allows for so much that you really need the control. Think of the environment. All of the interactions, the systemics you can use against themselves, all of this combined with the actions and spells of D&D, you need careful planning, setting up, and execution. That works really well in turn-based. Knowing that it is turn-based also allows us to make every combat moment feel unique and very different from previous fights. You get a lot of diversity, and we can make each encounter a real challenge. Combined with all of this, turn-based gives each person playing a greater sense of control, strategy, and agency. And on top of that, turn-based works really well in multiplayer. Turn-based was a source of contention and controversy for a lot of Baldur's Gate fans, as a lot of critics were saying that because it's turn-based, just like Divinity, that Baldur's Gate 3 will be just a Divinity clone or expansion. Swin is pointing out here that turn-based works best to give a true-to-life D&D experience, and that is their main goal for the game. Also, on a completely personal level, I know I often feel overwhelmed in games that just allow you to pause whenever you want. Since I started playing turn-based games, it's so hard to go back. Like, it just feels like I have so much more control in turn-based games.
Question 9. Julius Borov, on behalf of the Beamdog community, asked, how are magical items going to be handled? Are they going to be set pieces that the player stumbles upon, or color-coded RNG drops, or something in between?
Larian Swin answered, they are set pieces. We are not doing generated loot. So what that seems to mean is if you are playing a game and you encounter a bow with the most amazing stats that you have ever seen on it, the next time you play the game, you will be able to encounter that very same bow with the same stats at the exact location. This has a few different effects on the game. For instance, it would greatly affect speedrunning. If you know where all the best items are, you can generate routes for yourself to get there in the most efficient way possible. It would also help with playing through the game multiple times. So, for instance, if you're on normal difficulty and you know where this really big power spike of a weapon is, you can plan out your route on a harder difficulty to get that first to use it against tougher enemies. And of course, it would also help content creators like myself who could help make some busted ass guides on where all the best gear in the game is. I suppose it's worth adding in here, by the way, that Divinity Original Sin 2 used is like a mixed system of this. A lot of the items in the game are totally randomized, especially from like vendors and stuff. You never really know what you're gonna get. You never know what you're gonna loot off of a lot of enemies. But then there's like the Brachus Rex gear, which is always hidden in the same spots, so you could try to seek that out. There's some legendary weapons in Act 1 that are always in the same spot. And especially when you get to Act 4, some of the strongest items in the game can be reliably found in the same locations. So Divinity uses a hybrid system. This is a lot more set in stone.
Question 10. Katakata Bijaksana asked, in Baldur's Gate 2, you go to Diarne's Keep. In the basement, there are a bunch of Umber Hulks, and if you go in and put dog meat in a certain place, it lures the Umber Hulks and you can lock them in. Then you get a bunch of experience for doing it. Has creatively solving problems by following hints given throughout the game like this been a major focus in the development of Baldur's Gate 3? In Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, it seemed like at points throughout the game, it was a focus, but it wasn't as common as I would have liked it to be. I prefer the sneaky problem solving over the hack and slash problem solving. I guess I'm lawfully aligned in real life or something.
Larry and David answered, regarding creative solutions, our world is really a simulation held together by rules and systemics. Creatures and items adhere to these rules. This means that reactivity, like the one you described, is always available to the player. It doesn't have to be scripted. Creatively solving problems is one of the things that we envisioned when writing these systems. If systemics don't allow for it, we also use N1 design when it comes to solving situations. In short, this means that there should always be multiple ways to solve a problem, and that we need to take into account everything that could have already happened and anything the player can come up with. What does the player expect to be possible here? You know, I'm actually really glad they mentioned this. There was a point in Divinity at the end of Act 1 where a very important NPC is channeling this spell to save you and everyone on your ship from a very important NPC that's coming to kill you. Was I subtle enough about this? Was there not any spoilers here? Well, basically, while trying to save the NPC that was summoning this portal, I died so many times, and I felt like I just could not keep her safe. This was in one of my earlier playthroughs when I didn't understand the game as much. So what I ended up doing was teleporting the channeling player, the channeling NPC, to the back of the ship, and then surrounding her with paintings and blocking paths with paintings, so that all of the enemy NPCs had to walk up to the paintings and start slashing away at them. And it didn't buy me a lot of time, but it bought me just enough time to get that spell off and to get out of there and keep playing. My run wasn't over. And that's just one example, you know? I was able to do creative stuff time and time again in Divinity. I'm sure a lot of us remember in my playthroughs using telekinesis in Act 1 to stack up the combustible plants and then just dropping those plants on people to kill them. We've done a ton of stuff like that. And it sounds like it's only going to be better in Baldur's Gate 3.
Question 11. Thor Thunderfist, on behalf of the subreddit Baldur's Gate, asked, there's been concerns that some aspects of the game, from what has been seen, feel too clean or feels too much like Divinity Original Sin 1 and 2. i.e. characters not having a certain air of grit or grime about them despite the circumstances, and does not fit the darker themes that have been part of the Baldur's Gate series. Do you plan on addressing this as you continue to work the overall aesthetics throughout early access and into release?
Larian Swin answered, yes. We actually have an entire system in development for grit and grime that adapts to circumstance, but it's not ready yet. When it comes to world and story, we aim for a broad spectrum. It can get very, very dark, but there's also moments of brightness. You know, I remember when I was playing through Dragon Age Origins, which wasn't a D&D game, but it was a really in-depth RPG. After fights, you would talk to your companions, and they would just be covered in blood, like from head to toe. It would be disgusting. It was like the tank would have to take a bath after every battle. It was seriously like, what, were you rolling in it? How is there so much blood? I kind of wonder if Baldur's Gate is going to have that level of grime to it. Very interested to see.
Question 12. New user 201890 asked, there's a lot of criticism on tone and story, which could be unwarranted due to only seeing 1 hour of gameplay. What are you doing to make sure the tone and story has the soul of the original Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, which we all love, and not just Dungeons & Dragons?
Larian Jan answered, at PAX you saw around 1 hour of what will become a very, very long story. In other words, you've seen nothing yet. Rest assured that the story of Baldur's Gate 3 is a dark epic, rife with dark encounters and tough choices that will challenge your preconceptions about what it is to be a hero. In fact, I'd say heroic players will have a hard time staying on the righteous path, whereas fiendish players will simply have a ball. One of the strong themes of the Baldur's Gate series is the discovery of darkness inside your character, and the choice of how to deal with what you are and what you may become. There's a very obvious interloper inside our player characters, the Illithid Tadpole. And as our story unfolds, you'll soon realize that the ways it is changing you aren't quite what you expected. Just as in Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, the dark sides of the story are balanced with romance, humor, heroism, catharsis, and these are very large games, and they contain a multitude of situations and tones. We're going to put you in some very dark places with some very unpleasant characters, but we'll show you a lot of beauty and wonder as well. Again, it will be in no small part up to you how dark the game becomes. We don't actively encourage you to do terrible things, but it's certainly an option. Giving you the freedom to roleplay means we're already prepared to mop up lots of blood. This one's a little unrelated, but one thing I was so impressed by with Divinity was the fact that major characters could die, such as, potential party members or NPCs, and the story would just keep going. The world kept spinning, life kept on living. You could play a storyline almost to the end, mess up and kill someone on accident, and that would be the end of that story. They didn't make you necessarily feel bad for that person dying, although I felt bad a lot. They didn't punish you for that story not being able to be fulfilled. That's just what happened, and the weight of that was on your shoulders. I always thought that was really cool that Larian would let you do that, when I don't feel like many other game developers do. And it sounds like they're taking it to potentially a next level here.
So what do you guys think about Larian's AMA? Let us know in the comments. I certainly think it cleared a lot up and addressed a lot of the concerns that the community had about Baldur's Gate 3, and if anything, I'm only more excited to get my hands on it and play it with my friends. Sorry it took so long to get this video out. If you haven't and would like to read the AMA for yourself, we've provided a link below in the description. We will certainly be making more videos on Baldur's Gate 3, so please remember to like, subscribe, and click the bell on this video for more BG3 content. Thanks for watching!